Hey, welcome back everybody. And today we're going to be installing the cams. Now I already did the exhaust cam, and the procedure for the exhaust cam and the intake cam, they're the same. So I'm going to walk you through what it takes to actually get all of this done. So what we did is on the carrier, we radiused the oil drain back holes, cleaned up all the casting flash that was in there, made all those nice and smooth so that the oil can actually get back into the head. And then we radiused the holes in the head so the oil can get back to the oil pan, because we want to try and keep the oil in the oil pan. We want to try and get it back there as quickly as possible. So it doesn't take much on those holes. We radiused them. We're going to try and do this in one take, but it may take two. So without further ado, let's get started. Now we're dealing with some new parts here, some new lifters, and for the new lifters, if you want to avoid a lot of valve train noise whenever you first start these motors, you always want to pump up the lifters a little bit before you assemble the motor. And these things it's quite a racket. It's very disconcerting. If you've ever started one of these fresh and new, the warm-up procedure, the new motor warm-up procedure is to bring the idle up to 2,000 RPMs and keep it there for up to 5 minutes, or until the noise dissipates. Of course, then you have to break the cam in after that, and you always follow your cam maker's instructions for bedding in the cam. So here we go. I already have all these already pumped up. So we got one more here, one more to go, and you can see we got a tiny little hole there, and we have an aluminum pan that we're putting these in, and we're going to send that little guy for a swim. There we go. All right, we're going to set you up and we'll show you how to do this. So this would be done for all 16 lifters. I'm trying not to wiggle you guys around too much. There we go. Also don't want my camera to topple over. Hopefully from there you can see what we're doing. We got our handy dandy parts cleaning brush. We're going to use a wooden tool on the bottom of the lifter to pump the air out of it. And whenever you first start on these, it can be really stiff. You just got to hold some pressure on it until you get one bubble of air out of it. After that, then it'll start to bleed a little bit easier. So we're going to push. I'm leaning my body weight on it. We got one bubble of air. We're going to let that suck some of that oil in. And again, we might have to do this in a couple videos, because this is going to take just a little while. But I wanted to show you just how long this kind of stuff takes. And I can actually feel the plunger starting to move now. The plunger and the lifter. These are hydraulic lifters in these motors. So you got to do this. So you can see we're starting to get some bubbles out of there. Hope you can see that okay. And they're really starting to move now quite nicely. And one thing I noticed with these, once you're done, oh, there's a couple bubbles. There we go. Now we're starting to make some progress. And the bubbles are getting a little bit bigger. And because of the surface tension of a fluid, whenever you pump that out, the bubble will want to cling on. It'll actually suck back in. The air will suck back into the lifter. So you just got to keep the pressure on until it detaches and rises to the top. And then whenever you release, it'll pull the oil in. There we go. And what I've noticed with these is once they're completely pumped full, or what you think is full, if you go back through and hit them again, you'll get a little bit more air out of them. I just got a couple bubbles out of that one, and now it's oil. There we go. Try some of these other ones. There we go. See that? Now these I did earlier, I'm actually getting a little bit of air out of them still. They're moving quite nicely though, I guess I have to say. This is just a 5W30 braking oil. Want something, I'm sorry, it's a 30 weight braking oil. There we go. We're still getting air out of it. You got to figure that oil, it's going to slowly drip in and fill the bottom of the cavity in the lifter. And if you've ever turned a like a maple syrup bottle upside down, you know the air doesn't go to the opposite side of the bottle instantly like it would with water. It takes its time, and so I think that's why we get air out of these. There, see, that's full flow. I think that's why we get air out of these later on. It takes a little while for the oil to settle in there, and then that slowly brings the air pocket up. And that's okay. We'll be patient. We're getting plenty of air out of there. There we go. See that? And you just gotta be patient. Keep after it. It's a nice tricep workout. Not gonna lie. Imagine doing 16 of these in a row. You can give up your gym membership, just do this all day. Alright, and if I tap on that a little bit, sometimes that speeds the process up. It'll help bring that air bubble to the top. There it is. Another little bubble out of it. And that's just sucking in oil. Right, we'll give it another tap. I don't know if that really helps, but we'll try it. And looks like that one there's pumped up pretty good. All these other ones seem fine. Alright, getting one little bubble out of that one. Yeah, these all seem fine. Okay. Next step. Now we're going to start assembling everything. So I'm going to move the camera here for you. And it's going to be a little shaky cam for a minute. And if this video starts getting a little bit too long, I will split it up into 2 parts. There we go. I think that's pretty good, so you can see what's going on. All right, it's a little chilly here today in PA. I already have everything all cleaned. The cam towers are cleaned. They're actually spotless. We got all this cleaned. Looks really good. But we are going to just to make sure it's absolutely perfectly clean. I don't like spraying the brake clean all over the place. Any oil residue that would be on there would just be washed down over the motor. So I just try and spray it on the rag and then wipe this around. And this is spotlessly clean, but we're gonna just make sure when you put these motors together, or any motor, you want to have everything as clean as if you're operating on a person. So, all right, next step is going to be the gasket. We have a lot of gaskets over here to do. Lots of gaskets to do. And there's really only one way to put this on. But there's the front and the back. You can see how it's straight here and angled here. I want to make sure that we're like that. We also have the oil feed line here for the cam, and that's that hole. So we just take the gasket, and there's little dowel pins that locate it. Super easy, no drama. Then we're going to take the cam carrier, and I'm going to dip a finger in some oil. I just want to get a little bit of oil on these lifter bores. Just a real thin coat of oil. It just makes the sliding the lifter down in a little bit easier. And I've tried using assembly lube with these, and it's kind of thick, and it doesn't let the lifter slide in quite as easy. So I just like to use engine oil, and it's not quite as vital with you have to have the assembly lube on there, which protects everything on the initial startup. It's not quite as vital on these because the cam only moves at half of the engine RPM, so you're not gonna see a crazy amount of movement up here and a lot of heat right away. And by that time, you're going to have oil pressure up here. We're going to prime this motor too. I'll show you how to do that in another video. So just want to be careful. We don't have to get too much on. We don't want it dripping all over the place. Just enough to coat your finger. Hopefully I'm not off camera. Can't really see. I know the motor's in camera. And I don't want this dripping down and getting on the gasket surface. But we'll double check that. Any excess, we'll just dab that up. I do not want that getting all over the gasket surface. I want that nice and clean. And we did get a drop on there, so take a minute, just take a second to clean that off. There we go. All right, and this is pretty straightforward. Again, there's only one way to put it on. If you look at the bottom, this is straight, this is angled. You can't mess this up. This is where the fuel rail bolts on. And I took a grinder and removed some of the casting flash that was on here. It's kind of sharp. And if you're working on these motors, just as your hand moves over them, as you touch them, little stuff like that just makes it a little bit nicer to deal with. A little bit nicer to do. And that's located, and that's all there is to that. So now we do want to put a little bit of assembly lube, because this is going to be some high pressure here on top of the valve stems. So we're going to start here, and we're going to put a nice, I usually start here in the front with these and just drip that down. Make sure I get it on the valve stem. Now a little bit of that's getting the lifter board, that's okay. A little bit of that's getting in the cam carrier, the cam rods. There's no bearings in these, but that's the surface where the cam sits. Come on. It's a little cold, so this stuff's a little thick today. I can actually see my breath today. But we're bundled up, we're okay. I'd much prefer to do this in about 50-degree temperatures rather than in the 20s, which it's in the mid-20s today. It's probably up to about 30 today now. Probably up to about 30 degrees. And I'm just going to make sure I coat the stem real good. Coat these surfaces. Stuff is sticky. Coat the stem. Get up where the cam rides. There we go. You want to have plenty of sharp towels around. Keep your so you can wipe this stuff off your hands. All right, and now the lifters. I want to dump all the oil out of them before I put them in. We got to make sure we put these in correctly. This flat side is, of course, the side where the cam goes. The bottom side is the side where the valve goes. Some goes in. Let's see, we don't want oil dripping around all over the place. Sometimes with these you'll get one or two that are a little snug. They don't want to go in perfect. I'm hoping these go in real smooth for you so it doesn't take us a long time. This looks like they are. Now and this is important, before I put that exhaust cam on, or this one for that matter, I turn the motor backwards. There it goes. There it goes. Turn the motor backwards 90 degrees. That brings all the pistons down in the bores a bit, because whenever you tighten these cam carriers down, the motor's going to be out of time, and this is an interference motor, so we don't want any drama with that. And that happens. Good. I better inspect that one. And give that a quick inspection. Really looking at the edges here. If that you're dealing with oil and slippery metal parts, and that looks perfectly fine, so that's good. So we're going to clean that off. Make sure it's clean. Start with another clean towel. not really compressing that at all. Get that nice and clean. These come packed, they're coated with a little bit of oil whenever they're new, just to keep them from rusting. But you always clean that off. And anything from whenever they machined them will go with it. And that looks perfect. So we'll oil this little guy up again. This is a little off. And my hand is covered with oil, but that's okay. It's all part of the engine building experience. Yeah, I don't want this video to go longer than 20 minutes, really. You know, whenever you pump these up new, plan on spending about half an hour just doing that. Yeah, see that one there? Be careful. Going in nice and smooth, except for that one. So a lot of times, whenever they do that, they're not sliding in perfectly straight. So I don't know why they do that, but sometimes they do. We don't want to force it, that's for sure. There's no burrs or anything on it. There it goes. Perfect. Perfect. Just gotta work with it a little bit. Be patient. All right, now, because we're dealing with oil and everything here, make sure we clean our hands up. And take another fresh towel, but you gotta have a lot of sharp towels around whenever you're doing this. Now we did just get a little bit of oil up here where these upper gaskets set. There's two like rope style, I guess you call it a rope style. They're like a silicone gasket that goes along each side to seal these up. On the back of the housing, on this one, the power steering pump will go. On this one here, you just put this little engine hoist plate, covers the back of the housing. You can use it to help hoist the engine. Never try to put lift the whole engine by just that. That's for sure. All right, and that looks pretty good. Okay, now ready. I'm going to take these gloves off for this because I do not want any oil residue at all on this. So set this here. Normally I do this on the bench, but we're going to set it there so you can see what we're doing. So we got our two gaskets here, and these only go on one way, and there is the front side and the back side. So this goes here, and we start. Just push that in. Just kind of going down along and pushing it in. And I'll grab the camera, I'll bring it over and show you a close-up of this whenever we're done here. Super easy. And you do have to kind of push it down in. There's little tabs that stick out on these that kind of help hold it into position. So you want to do that. That way when you're turning upside down, it doesn't fall out. Let me grab the camera, show you what that looks like before we put it all together. You can see we've got little tabs sticking out there to keep it from sliding back, and this protrudes out just a little bit so that whenever we put this together, that gets compressed and seals it. And here you can see these tiny little tabs that stick out. That helps hold it in the groove here. All right, and we're set. We're set. As I like to go through, just give that a little extra insurance. All right, and we're going to bolt it down. Put you back up here. Going to go for the shaky cam here. There we go. Okay. All right, and that. There we go. One side just didn't want to stick in there. Make sure we're okay. Whenever I turn that upside down, I don't want it hanging down. If you watched one of the other build videos, I actually reuse these. You can clean them with some brake cleaner, carb cleaner, and reuse them. And sometimes it will hang down. You can just take a little bit of, like a little dab of some silicone and just put in there. That helps hold it on. Not enough where it would actually squeeze out, but enough where it would grab hold of the little gasket and hold it in. And there's little locating dowels on here, 4 of them. So I'm gonna put that in there like that. That's how that goes. All right, now before we do that, we're going to put the cam in. So we got our cam here, and I'm going to do the gloves for this because this is going to get messy. Another pair of gloves on. Well, nowadays it's hard to find these gloves. I don't know how much time we're on here. We're already at 21 minutes. All right, so I think what we're going to do is maybe we can stretch this a little bit. Shouldn't take too much longer, right? Shouldn't take too much longer to do this. It's going to be a long video, but you can see it all. We'll take our assembly lube and just start. Some of that in each lobe, each one of the cam bearings, or the cam journal rather. There's no cam bearings in this motor. Like so. Spread that around. Cut those up. And this is where you just gotta get into it. Gotta get sticky. All right, put some more on the other side. And putting this motor together, I used just about this whole bottle assembly lube. I mean, you don't have to go crazy with it, but you don't want to be stingy either. Get a little bit more. I want that journal completely covered. I want the cam lobes completely covered, all sides. There we go. It's nice and sticky. Now, how are we supposed to set this in there? Because it's not going to, because we got the lobes on there, it's not going to set perfectly flat. So what we do is we just set it in there and rotate it until we get it down as far as we can. It's as close to being on its I keep wanting to say bearing surfaces, but the cam carrier where the cam runs. So we want that to be as low as possible. In this case, the pin is up. So I think that's pretty close to actually being in time. But we're not going to be taking any chances. We have the motor turned backwards 90 degrees, and then we put this little guy on. And that's not going to set all the way down on there just yet. It's going to be close. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, then we're going to grab our bolts here. These have 10 bolts. This one here, the intake side is 10 plus 2. And I'm just going to put them all in. We're going to tighten them in sequence, but should we get them all started here? Actually, that one there. This one here and this one is for the ignition cover. So not worried about them ones. Alright, now let's run them in. And we're at 23 minutes. I think we're okay. Probably end up taking about 30 or so minutes to do this. We're not going to tighten that up. We're just snugging everything down. Not really worried about the sequence now. Just want to get the center down and work my way to the outside edges. Now, before I get that all the way down, I like to take a look just to make sure that silicone gasket is not moved, and it has not. And I'm sure there's a torque for that, but it's not really listed in any of the literature I've seen. So we'll do these 10, and then we go back and tighten those two up. Now I just want to get it down where it's all the way down on the dowels and seated on the bottom of the carrier. Now the torque specs for this thing has changed over the years. It's gone from 132 pounds and 75 degrees, 132 pounds and 90 degrees. One more time, 132 inch pounds and 75 degrees, and 132 inch pounds and 90 degrees. And then they upped it again later on to 16 foot-pounds, and which 132 inch pounds is 11 foot-pounds. They upped it to 16 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees, and I am not 32. Okay, right there. I am not going to tighten it that tight, because if you do, you'll pull the threads out of the head. I don't know where they got that torque spec or how they come up with that, but I never tighten them quite that far. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with these ones here. There's the center bolts here. We have now the center bolts here, and then the next outside ones are here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with these center three here, the ones that are closest together. We'll start here and go to 132, and then this one, and this is a clean motor, so they just threaded in really nice. And we're going to go here. Here. I'm going to keep track where I'm at. There. And there. Come over. Okay, now we start again. Normally you would torque it down and then turn your 75 or 60 or 90, whatever you're doing. But because as I torque some of these down, some of these center ones will loosen up. So let's try those again. See that we got a little bit of movement out of those. That's it. Nothing out of that one. A little bit out of that one. A little bit out of that one. See a little bit. We keep doing this until we don't get any movement at that particular torque. So we'll start again. Nothing. No movement on that one. Movement on that one. Or that one. We're good. Good. And there's good. And there's good. Okay. Now, next step. Even though sometimes in the book it'll say, you know, 75 or 90 degrees. I only ever go about 45 degrees on these, maybe 60, but I think 45 is enough. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get out through and mark each one of these. On one side. Just put a little tiny mark on the cam housing here. And then we're going to come over about 45 degrees, put our marks, making sure we mark it on the correct side. Whoop. There, 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 45 is an easy one to just eyeball. You don't have to go crazy with this. I mean, if I had a torque angle meter, I would use it, but I think that's what they call it. So those are all marked to 45. So then we go through in sequence and line the marks up. That's 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. And 10. That's it. All right. And then the last task will be tightening these down. And before this motor goes back to the owner, I'll seal this up with some good duct tape. That way no dust or dirt's going to get in it. And sometimes we'll have some of the assembly lube dripping out the front of the motor, or the front of the cam housings here. That's okay, we can clean that up. Don't have to go crazy with those, so we need those on. Let's do a little close up of what we got here, so you can see